Couple hours from now, they're going to have a rally in Cincinnati to celebrate winning an AFC championship. Ryan, as a guy that has a Super Bowl ring, probably not on your finger currently, but what are your thoughts on that? A fan base and a team celebrating a runner-up finish. You like that?
I mean, I think, to each his own, I guess. When you're a city and an organization that's been starved for a winner, the way that this team has, I think this is equivalent to being in high school, losing in the semifinals of the playoffs, and your parents standing outside the bus when you pull up to Archbishop Shaw High School singing, "We are proud of you." I said, "We are proud of you." And nothing's wrong with that. I think they want to make sure these guys feel appreciated for what they've done. This is also a very young nucleus. I think they want to continue to show support for their accomplishments. And also, I guess, kind of like egg them on, like, hey, we believe you can do more. But I think the other piece of it is, and I said this on NFL Live, the Cincinnati Bengals as an organization have to change their mindset. They have to change their mindset from figuring out how to compete to figuring out how to win a championship. And part of changing that mindset is not having pep rallies because you lost the Super Bowl, right? You had a party before they went. They know you appreciate them winning the AFC championship. Now let's move on and figure out how we can protect Joe Burrow so he doesn't have to finish the Super Bowl with a sprained MCL because our guard, center, and our other guard are basically, RC, Pony, and Chris. I think those are like the things they need to be focused on more so than having pep rallies.
Is it as simple for them? Because, obviously at Ryan, we're keeping an eye on them to see what they do, if they make this team even better, and then they're even tougher to get past in the division. Is it as simple in your mind as just, hey, offensive line in free agency, offensive line in the draft maybe, you protect Joe Burrow, everything else starts to fall into place again?
I think that's part of it. I think you got to add depth in the secondary at your cornerback position. That was also, to me, a weakness of the team. You have to make sure that Jesse Bates doesn't get out of the building. You have to understand that eventually Logan Wilson will be up for a contract, and he deserves big-time money for the type of player that he is. Guys like B.J. Hill and D.J. Reader, you need to make sure that, you keep the nucleus of this team together. And obviously from a skill player standpoint, this team is set. I think you want to add another receiver when you look at a guy like like T.J. Boyd, who just like inexplicably dropped his first football since early 2020 on a huge third down conversion. How do you see him going forward as a part of your team? Obviously you have Jamar, you have C.J. Uzama. And so I think it's just continuing to realize that with Joe Burrow at quarterback, you have an opportunity to be championship caliber every year, like we see with the Buffalo Bills, like we see with the Cincinnati Bengals, a team like the Los Angeles Chargers, who we feel will be the same way going forward. What do you do to get yourself better than those teams? What can you do to be better than the Los Angeles Rams by 4 more points? And I think those are the things that this team has to figure out, and you got to change your mindset in order to do that. Like they might want to get an indoor facility since they freaking live in Cincinnati. It's freaking cold.
Ryan Clark, our guest here. Yeah, I've heard some horror stories about the Bengals and training camp and stuff like that. So the Steelers' mindset is win championships, but they're stuck in the competing quadrant of the league right now. We won't talk to you again for a while, Ryan, during the offseason. So if you are trying to get the Steelers back to contending for championships, what's the first thing you do this offseason?
You figure out your quarterback position, and you figure it out, and not necessarily figure it out as in find a solution, but you figure it out and see what you can do. I don't believe that Mason Rudolph is the quarterback. I don't believe that Dwayne Haskins is the quarterback. So is there a free agent that can get you to compete? The problem with the Pittsburgh Steelers is over the last, 5 years, they've been able to compete without truly having elite quarterback play. Just compete, though. There was never any of those teams that we really thought was championship caliber, including this year, even though they get to the playoffs. And so it's, do we believe Kenny Pickett? Do we believe Malik Willis? Any of these guys are first-day starters, the Matt Corral. I don't really know. I don't really think so either. I also don't believe you think he's in the building. So what do you do in free agency to help yourself? Do you get a middle-of-the-road, middle-aged quarterback that's good enough, that could at least be as good as Ben was last year, and say we tie ourselves over to one of these rookies could play? And so I think that's the first thing you have to do. I think you have to continue to build up front on the offensive line. At some point, we got to get some elite pedigree on the offensive line. You know, Marquise Pouncey, the reason he's going to be a Hall of Famer is because he had elite pedigree. David DeCastro, elite pedigree. Alan Faneca, elite pedigree. My point is, like when you're drafting these guys in the first round, you're drafting them because they're uber talented, period. And it's very rare, you know, it's like, hey, man, we drafted this old lineman in the 5th round, and he's an absolute dog and going to be all-pro all of his life. You know, we don't all get to be Kelsey from the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, that guy's going to be a Hall of Famer. And so I think you really need to focus on building that offensive line, finding a linebacker, a guy like a Christian Harris from Alabama who you can probably get late 2nd, 3rd round, and continue to build your team. You also need to add a corner that's a star, figuring out what Joe Hayden's going to do. I think you still need to upgrade from him. And so you have to build in so many places, but they don't figure out a situation at quarterback, it's not really going to matter. They're going to stink.
Ryan, you just named, like, you know, we've been doing this. The station just turned 12 years old yesterday. Was the 12-year anniversary of this station going on the air. You just named more positions, and crucially the biggest one, quarterback, than I have ever heard them needing going into any offseason, man. It just feels like even if the plan is perfect, like they are still very far away from being where they need to be when I hear you say all that.
No, I think they are. I mean, I think this team is in a position that they haven't been in an extremely long time. You know, they've drafted better than they have recently before. They've had people that were holding over or players that were coming back to the team that were better than what's, you know, assembled there at the moment. And so when you look at all these things, like this team's in a crossroads. It's at a crossroads. And I think this team being at a crossroads is kind of what had people thinking that Mike Tomlin may leave or he could be interested in going to college because, you know, the Pittsburgh Steelers aren't the rebuilding type. You know, they kind of retool and continue to try to win and compete. And so this is a different thing for them. But still, you know, Kevin Colbert in his last, you know, off season is going to try to figure it out. Obviously, Mike T is going to try to do the same thing. You know, for everybody, for all the Yinzers, I hope they don't stink, but it's a possibility that they will.
Ryan, would you want to do something at quarterback before the draft? I mean, the timing of the offseason, the free agency window and trade window is kind of before you get to draft day.
Yeah, I think you try, but I think you only try if it's intelligent, right? You don't try to do it and handicap your team. And the other piece is, like, it's actually kind of hard. It's actually kind of hard to know who's available. Like, is a Russell Wilson truly available? Do you have the capital to get Aaron Rodgers? You know, I mean, are we going to try to coax Tom Brady out of retirement? You know, so it's not really like those game changers at the quarterback position do not become available. And so I think it's pretty hard. I think the best you could do is a middle-of-the-road older quarterback who has started some games, who's maybe now a backup somewhere or moved around. You know, I don't know if you, like, do something stupid like try to trade for Mitch Trubisky and get some of that number 2 overall draft pick talent. I mean, it's just such a difficult task in doing this. And so, you know, you guys probably know Mason better than I do. All I do is watch the film, and the film ain't good, guys. You know, I would not want Mason Rudolph to be my quarterback. I would not walk on the field confidently as the 2008 Pittsburgh Steelers defense that we could score the 13 points we needed every game to win with Mason Rudolph at quarterback.
And T.J. Watt said as much last week. And
multiple
didn't even
guys
mince
have.
words.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and so I just think it's just a tough place to be, man. And it just shows you that you have to have a contingency plan for your future Hall of Famers.
And it's not as easy. Like, I'll admit this. I'm guilty of this more than maybe anybody here at the station, Ryan. I think, you know, as a fan, man, one bad year, and if it positions you in 2023, you draft a bunch of guys this year that address other needs, and then maybe you know you're not going to be good this year. You win 5 games at most. Then you get to draft that next quarterback from a stronger class. But, like, they can't think that way because there's guys whose paychecks, whose next contracts depend on it. So then I think they're never going to be a team that not tries to sink to the bottom, but understands that's a way you can get good in a hurry in the NFL.
No, I mean the Pittsburgh Steelers way is not to sink to the bottom. You know, it's not to tank. You know, we don't want Mike Tomlin coming out with lawsuits that Art Rooney's paying him $100. You know, because he's a little cheaper, $100 to lose games. And so instead of 100,000, like Brian Flores was reportedly going to get
$100 in a Permane sandwich or something like that for every loss.
You're right. Yeah, that's not going to happen, bro. And so I think they're going to try to win. You know, they're going to do their best, but I also believe that they're smart enough to have an understanding of how much they can win. You know, every team doesn't enter the season believing they can win a Super Bowl. I just don't think it's true. You know, the Detroit Lions knew they weren't going to win a Super Bowl this year. And it depends on if the Pittsburgh Steelers are willing to go to camp and have that feeling.
Ryan Clark, our guest. Ryan, with that being said, so Malik Willis, you know, you have Todd McShay on. You talk to those guys. And I'm sure at some point, if you haven't already, you'll like break these guys down, or Orlovsky will, and you guys will share thoughts on it. Like, you know, the thought on him seems to be big boomer bust, a lot of talent, but very raw, not going to be NFL ready from the very beginning. So do you think the Steelers would draft a guy with the 20th pick who might have to wait a while to play? Like, do you think they would do the Mahomes model or the Lance model or Love model with a quarterback?
Well, listen, I think that was the model with Ben Roethlisberger, right?
Yeah.
And it just
Tommy
just
Maddox.
didn't work out that way. Yeah, it just didn't work out that way. You know, you picked him at 11, I believe it was, or whatever it was, and you thought that he'd get an opportunity to wait. You thought that he'd have a season before he had to play, and he was forced into action, and he was seen as a project, and he kind of truly was. You know, I played the Steelers that year. We weren't worried about Ben. We was trying to figure out how to stop Deuce and Bust. You know, and so I think it just all depends on where you value these guys, you know, how you see them progressing. Do you see, you know, you being able to develop them to the point of success, and how soon or how early can that happen? And is that worth the pick you have in the first round?
How tough do you think it's going to be for a guy like a Cam Hayward who's getting into his mid-30s, or even T.J. Watt who's in his prime but he knows that doesn't last forever, to just stare down this situation, Ryan, and know that this year, this is like 1 year. You don't get promised that many in the NFL where it is just not happening. They can see the roster as the same as we can.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just play. Like, to be honest, man, we're all independent contractors, you know, and you understand, like, you got to play. And I think sometimes having that feeling of, you know, not being complete as a team or not having the help where you need it almost elevates your play. And I mean, you know, you win some, you lose some, you know, but you live. You know, you live to fight another day. And, you know, because the boys used to always say, man, sometimes you get the bear, sometimes the bear gets you. You know, and sometimes that bear is your own roster. And I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are in that place now.
Ryan, what's your crystal ball say week 1 of 2022? Who is their starting quarterback for that game?
Bro, I'd love to be able to tell you. I have no idea. I'm just being straight up. Like, I don't know.
I think a safe answer is hopefully not Mason Rudolph, based on this conversation.
What I can answer is that dude is not in the building today.
Yeah.
Yep.
How much does Stephon Tuitt's situation impact how you feel about the Steelers? Like, I don't know if I've ever asked you, like, your take on how good he is or what kind of difference he can make.
I think he's a really good player. I don't think he's a great player, though. You know, and people who aren't great players can be replaced. You know, he's not Aaron Donald. If he were Aaron Donald, I'd give you a different answer. I'd say, oh, hell, that matters a lot. It matters, but he can be replaced. If he was Cam Hayward, I'd be like, this is a big deal. But it's not a big deal. I think you can find somebody that can, you know, not necessarily match his production, but you can find someone that's as productive. You can find a group of players that become as productive or that help your team as much as he did. But he isn't a guy who, when I watched the film, I felt like he jumped out every opportunity, you know, he was on, you know, he took a snap. And when guys are those type of people, they become replaceable. And I do believe he's replaceable.
Jeremy Fowler told me last week that he thinks teams will call the Steelers about Chase Claypool trying to buy low on him. Would you consider trading him for a second or third round pick, Ryan?
Yes. I would. Too much fuss for too little production. And the problem with that is going to be, you see how talented he is, you've seen the explosive plays, and you think, what if we have a quarterback other than Ben Roethlisberger? But the way I see it, too, sometimes it's like addition by subtraction. You get a second-round pick. You can draft a wide receiver that's just as talented because that's where you found him as well, who is less of a headache.
Did you enjoy the halftime show?
I did. I thought the halftime show was dope.
Hold on. This is a not halftime show related question. I'm sorry. I was going to sneak this in earlier. Is Aaron Donald the greatest defensive player of all time?
Wow. Woo.
No, not yet. He's in the conversation of being, along with probably LT, Reggie White, Bruce Smith, and Prime.
He's not going to retire, is he? He can't. It'll be one of the few times I'll be happy for him that he'll have his health and he'll have plenty of money. But, man, it would feel like there's
watching him play.
Right, there's a lot of meat on the bone when you watch him play, man. He still looks like he's a rookie out there, energy-wise.
Hey, man, listen, bro. It takes a toll on your body to do what these men are doing. It takes a toll on you mentally as well. And if you feel like you've accomplished everything, like if every goal you set out to accomplish you have already, why wait around? You know, I think not very many players get to walk away from this themselves. A lot of times the game tells you, you know, when it's over. And so it's a pretty dope deal if you can tell the game, you know what, I'll get you before you get me.
Ryan, you know how much I feel about you, how strongly I feel about what you do on TV, and then the few minutes that you spend with us every week, man. You have no idea how much this meant to us this football season. Thank you.
My man, y'all have a good one.